Well, hello there, everyone. In this video, we're recording passage number 1 from Cambridge number 17. I guess it's passage, I think it's test number 3, I'm not really sure. So here we have passage 1. As always, it's pretty factual. As you can see, the thylacine, and it's a Tasmanian tiger. So yeah, and just before you actually start completing the test or the passage or whatever you name it, what you have to do is just you always have to understand what you're reading. Actually, you have to be interested in it, not just for the sake of finding correct answers or so on. Okay, so other than that, we have questions that are we have sentence notes completion or sentence completion, whatever it is, and true false not given. These two questions, they follow the order. So I'm just gonna say that. So notes completion, and I'll just say plus true false not given. Follow the order. So let's say in order. Questions. The questions follow the order. Questions follow the order. All right. Now, first of all, looked rather like a dog. Had a series of stripes along its body and tail. Ate an entirely something diet, probably dependent mainly on dependent means it. It was reliant on something. So when hunting, young spent first month of life inside its mothers. So we already have it's pretty easy, I guess. Last evidence in mainland Australia is a 3,100-year-old something. Probably went extinct in mainland Australia due to animals now known as dingoes. I'm gonna find dingoes here. Dingoes. There we go. We have dingoes. And reduction in something in available sources of food were partly responsible for decline in Tasmania. All right, now extinct thylacine, also known as Tasmanian tiger, was a marsupial that bore a superficial resemblance to a dog. So resemblance to a dog, as you can see, looked like a dog. I think I'm gonna take my time. Resemblance to a dog. I think I'm gonna take my time to show you that it's always about paraphrasing. Its most distinguishing feature was the 13 to 19 dark brown stripes over its back, beginning at the rear of the body and extending to a tail. You can see that along its body and tail means rear of the body and extending onto the tail. Right there, as you can see, it's always about paraphrasing. Ate an entirely something. The thylacine's average nose to tail length for adult males was 162.6 centimeters compared to 153.7 centimeters for females. The thylacine appeared to occupy most of its terrain except dense. So that appeared to occupy most types of terrain. Terrain is a land. So terrain here, it is a land with open eucalyptus forest thought to be its prime habitat. Eucalyptus was its prime habitat. All right. So in terms of feeding, it was exclusively carnivorous. So it was exclusively. The word entirely is saying is exclusively. Exclusively. There we go. Exclusively a carnivorous diet. So they eat mostly meat. So carnivorous. I think that's how it spells. All right, there we go. Depended on something. So in terms of feeding and blah blah blah, we'll highlight that and give it a number 1. And there we go. And its stomach was muscular with an ability to distend so that it could eat large amounts of food at one time, probably an adaptation to compensate for long periods when hunting was unsuccessful and food scarce. So depended mainly on something when hunting. So the thylacine was not a fast runner and probably caught its prey by exhausting it during a long pursuit. So during long distance chases, thylacines were likely to have relied more on scent than any other sense. So there we go. We have another answer for question number 2. Take that and give it a number 2. So it was scent is a smell So scent is a smell. So we'll take that. Scent is a smell. Whoops, I didn't mean to highlight that. So probably dependent mainly on something. The word dependent means relied more on. Relied more on is a paraphrase for dependent mainly. So they emerged to hunt during the evening, night, and early morning, and intended to retreat to the hills and forests for shelter during the day. Despite the common name tiger, the thylacine had a shy, nervous temperament. Although mainly nocturnal ones they hunt at night. It was sighted moving during the day, and some individuals were even recorded basking in the sun. So the thylacine had an extended breeding season from winter to spring, with indications that some breeding took place throughout the year. The thylacine, like all marsupials, was tiny and hairless when born. Newborns crawled into the pouch on the belly of their mother. So young spent first months of life inside its mother's mm, belly, I guess. Whoops, hold on, guys. 1 second. They always. All right, excuse me there, guys. I made a mistake here by pausing. So, anyways, so spent first months of life inside its mother's something. So the newborn crawled into the pouch. Into the pouch. It's not a belly. So we have question number 3 over here. Highlight that normally. So it's not belly. Excuse me. It's pouch. Pouch. All right, there we go. So pouch into the pouch means inside. So and attach themselves in one of the 4 teats, remaining there for up to 3 months. When old enough to leave the pouch, the young stayed in a lair such as a deep rocky cave, well-hidden nest, or hollow log, whilst the mother hunted. Approximately 4,000 years ago, as we can see, we're almost there to question number 4. The thylacine was widespread throughout New Guinea and most of mainland Australia, as well as the island of Tasmania. The most recent, well-dated occurrence of a thylacine on the mainland is a carbon-dated fossil from Murray Cave. There we go. So, which is around 3,100 year old. Take a highlight of that and give it a question number 4. There we go. Okay, let me just highlight that. All right. It's a fossil. Fossil is a remain that is left from the animal. Probably blah 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 dingoes. Its extinction coincided closely with the arrival of wild dogs called dingoes in Australia and a similar predator in New Guinea. Dingoes never reached Tasmania, and most scientists see this as the main reason for the thylacine survival there. The dramatic decline of the thylacine in Tasmania, which began in the 1830s and continued a century, is generally attributed to the relentless efforts of sheep farmers and bounty hunters with shotguns. While this determined campaign undoubtedly played a large part, it is likely that various other factors also contributed to the decline and eventual extinction of the species. Okay, so that means these include competition with wild dogs introduced by European settlers, loss of habitat, along with the disappearance of prey species. So reduction in habitat. So habitat means the place they live, and available food sources. Available food sources is a synonym for that. This synonym is prey species. So Tasmania tigers, they hunted for a particular type of animal. I'm not really sure, and a distemper-like disease which may also have affected the thylacine. All right. Significant numbers of thylacine were killed by humans from the 1930s onwards. Okay, now significant numbers. So the dramatic decline of the thylacine in Tasmania, which began in the 1930s and continued for a century. So here, I wanna first of all emphasize. I wanna highlight here the number of the question. Here it is 5, I guess. There we go. Nope, not like that, and like this. All right, great. So that the dramatic decline of the thylacine. So significant numbers of thylacines were killed by humans in the 1930s and continued for centuries, generally attributed to the relentless efforts of sheep farmers and bounty hunters. They killed with shotguns. So they killed with shotguns. So that means question number 6 is already there, which is true. So we're gonna take that. True. Onwards, the word here onwards, 1830 and onwards means 1830 and continued. All right, and continued. Several thylacines were born in zoos during the late 1800s. While this determined blah blah blah, we did that. There was only one successful attempt to breed a thylacine in captivity. So thylacines were born in zoos during the late 1900s. During the late 1800s means almost 1900s. So there was only one successful attempt to breed a thylacine in captivity at Melbourne Zoo in 1899. So several thylacines were born in zoos. No, not several. Not several, but it is. But there's only one successful attempt to breed. So that means question number 7 here is going to be false. John Gould's prediction about the thylacine surprised some biologists. This was despite the large numbers that went through some zoos, particularly London Zoo and Tasmania's Hubbard Zoo. The famous naturalist John Gould foresaw the thylacine's demise when he published his Mammals of Australia between 1848 and 1863, writing, "The numbers of this singular animal will speedily diminish. Extermination will have its full sway, and it will then, like the wolf of England and Scotland, be recorded as an animal of the past." So, however, John Gould's prediction about the thylacine. So, prediction here, the keyword prediction means he foresaw. He foresaw, but we do not know that if it's actually surprised some biologists. So the information is not given. So therefore, we'll put not given as well. In the early 1900s, many scientists became worried about the possible extinction of the thylacine. So, however, there seems to have been a little public pressure to preserve the thylacine, nor was much concern expressed by scientists at the decline of the species in the decades that followed. There we go. We are following everything. Everything comes in order. Just really, it's really satisfying to find the answers here. So the answer is going to be false here as well, because they were they became worried. They became worried means, of course, they were they were worried, right? So, however, here has been little public pressure on the public, and nor was much expressed. That means there was no worries in the public, nor there was and scientists didn't show any concerns as well. They pretty much didn't care. All right. So T.T. Flynn's proposal to rehome captive thylacines on an island proved to be impractical. So a notable proved to be impractical means does not work. So a notable exception was T.T. Flynn, professor of biology at the University of Tasmania. In 1914, he was sufficiently concerned about the scarcity of the thylacine to suggest that some should be captured and placed on some island. Okay, he was. But it was not until 1929, with the species on the very edge of extinction, that Tasmania's Animals and Birds Protection Board passed a motion protecting thylacines only for the month of December, which was thought to be their prime breeding season. But they seem to be impractical. Impractical means that whether it was like rehome captive thylacines, impractical means that he proposed to send thylacine, or this also known as Tasmanian tigers, to an island, and also he's saying that the approach that he is suggesting is not going to work. However, he was sufficiently concerned about the scarcity of thylacines to suggest that some should be captured and placed on some island. But it was not until 1929, with the species on the very edge of extinction, that Tasmania's Animals, Birds, and Protection, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I do not find the information that whether it was practical or impractical, so I'm just going to give it a not given. Because it does not suggest that whether the island is a habitat where they can live, There will still be reasonable numbers of thylacines in existence when a piece of legislation protecting the species during the Brayton was passed. There were still reasonable numbers. So there were no reasonable numbers, I guess, right? There's only one. So the last wild thylacine to be killed was shot by a farmer in the northeast of Tasmania in 1930, leaving just captive specimens. Oh my god, not specimens, but specimens. So here it's going to be number 11. Whoops. Sorry for that. Oh, right. I didn't mean to highlight it. Like this. There we go. So it's going to be false here. So we'll have false. There was reasonable numbers. That means it was more than two. It was more than one. So the last one. And also that's number one. Other than that, there was only one. I guess that was written here. Only one successful attempt. And from 1930 to 1936, the only known living thylacine were all in captivity. Official protection of the species by the Tasmanian government was introduced. Also here, leaving just captive specimens. Here we have two answers probably here. See, we have 11 and 12. There were reasonable numbers of thylacines. The last known is only one. The only known living thylacines were the only known living in the world were all in captivity. But just leaving just captive specimens means captive specimens. That means animals that were captured. So this answer is going to be true. Attempts to find living thylacines are now rarely made. Now rarely made means it's talking about even in 2025. There have been numerous expeditions and searches for the thylacine over the years, none of which has produced definitive evidence that thylacine still exists. The species was declared extinct by the Tasmanian government in 1986. So there have been numerous. So it's talking about the past tense, right? However, the passage does not give us any information whether or not they still there's still expeditions or searches about not about but for thylacine or the Tasmanian tiger. So therefore we have the answer number 13 as not given. There you go, guys. We have passage number 1 finished. So pretty much, as you can see, everything follows the order. Once you know the questions, once you know how they work, you'll be good to go. And other than that, do not forget that notes completion and true false not given questions, they always follow the order. And once you know the vocabulary and once you know how the paraphrases work, you're good to go. So thank you very much for watching, guys. I will see you on the next episode.